Hey, everybody. I am Mike Holm, and this is the Weird Threads podcast. As always, I got Tyler West with me, as well as Kevin Leversey. And our special guest tonight is a man by the name of Jason Weaver. And Jason Weaver is not only a researcher of Sasquatch, commonly known as Bigfoot, but he's also an experiencer. He's indicated to us that he's had some encounters with Sasquatch himself or herself. Maybe we'll ask him about that. But really, we brought him in here to, get his knowledge and his experiences and to have a conversation about that. So Jason, welcome. Thank you for joining us.
No, thanks for having me, guys. Good to be here.
Yeah, definitely. We kind of had a chat before this. I think before we get into your experience with this creature, why don't you kind of give us a little bit of background on like some of the research that you've done, or I mean, if it makes more sense to go through your experience first that led you into this research, feel free to do that as well.
What put you on the path to Sasquatch?
Well, I never really ever expected to be even part of such a subject or be amongst the circles of Sasquatch research or paranormal research or anything like that. I've always known of such things, but I kind of found out about those things as a kid, and I'm from upstate New York. I grew up in a very small town in northern New York, right on the banks of Lake Ontario. My hometown is called Sackets Harbor, and I grew up on a farm. And prior to living in Sackets, we lived in another town not too far away, but we had a dairy farm there. Not a big dairy farm. We had probably maybe 80 or 90 head of cattle and that kind of thing. And they were milk cows. And my father's health got bad, so we ended up selling the farm, and we moved to the place I ultimately did the rest of my growing up at. I was 4 when we left the farm, and we moved to another farm, but it was my grandparents' farm, and it was more of a hobby farm. It was a smaller barn, and there wasn't any kind of dairy farming, anything like that. It was mostly hobby farms. We raised what we call freezer beef, and we had chickens, and we were all it was farm life. We self-sufficient, grew our own gardens and that kind of thing. And my parents are children of the Depression. They were born during the Depression, so they're hardworking and pragmatic, and so we learned how to fend for ourselves. We never outsourced anything as far as mechanics. If something needed to get fixed, we fixed it out. We were very self-sufficient, that kind of thing, So we ended up moving to my grandparents' place, and my grandfather had a pig barn. It was a small barn. It was sort of like built like a lean-to, and it was all enclosed. It had a concrete floor and that kind of thing, and then we had a couple of pastures, and the overall property was about 100 acres. But 90 plus acres of it was strictly wooded areas, thick woods, lots of game, lots of deer, and everything you can imagine. There's bear in northern New York, but we didn't really have them around where I lived. But it was very, very rich in wildlife. We also harvested firewood out of there, and so this is how I grew up. And my grandparents lived right next door to me. And I was fortunate to have not only one set of grandparents, but 2 sets of grandparents that lived right next door to me, which was awesome, And like I said, my current age is I'm 51, and my father died when I was a kid, but my mother will be 87 this year. Just to kind of give you an idea, my parents are a bit older than most parents of people my age. Okay, so long and the short of it. So I was always, I was country living. I'm a big Johnny Cash fan. As you can see, I got a lot of Johnny Cash stuff on my wall here, and The song Country Boy, that was me. You know, I never ran around barefooted too much, especially out in the woods and stuff, but pretty much everything else. I fished and hunted frogs and chased squirrels and hunted rabbits and all that kind of stuff. And used to do a lot of berry picking. So I'm going to get to the point where how I was thrusted into the Sasquatch Bigfoot world. It was 1981, and I don't recall exactly what time of the year it was, but it was berry picking season. Okay, we picked blackberries. We had a big blackberry thicket on our property, and we also had a big raspberry thicket, and we used to pick a lot of berries. And I lived on a dead end road, and like I said, it was my grandparents' property initially, but I also had two uncles that lived next door, and you know, it was a dead end road, but everybody that lived at the end of the road was pretty much all family. And at one time, the entire road was all family. Okay, so I have a couple of uncles living there nearby, and you know, that kind of thing. And one of my cousins, he's a couple of years older or younger than me. So I'm thinking he's around 9 or 10, and I'm like I said, around 10 or 11 at this point. He and I decided to go berry picking. So how this road was we had a dead end road, and then where the road itself ended, it was a hill. Now the road continued through, but it wasn't paved or anything like that. The snow plows, we had a lot of snow up there. We have two seasons up there, winter and the 4th of July. So we used to have snow plows there all the time, and so they didn't plow the hill, but it was a tractor road, and we had farmers that had fields down the road, so they used to drive their tractors up and down the road and that kind of thing. And so what you would do is you'd go down this road, and then the road would go down for a while, and then it would bear to the left. And as it bared to the left, there was also a little side road or what we call a trail that bared to the right. And as you took that trail, it would bring you into this big meadow. And to the right, I'm just kind of painting you a picture. To the right is the big blueberry thicket. And if I was standing there at the bottom of the hill, if I was to look over the top of the blueberry bushes, there would be a hill wooded area, and my house would be up there at the top of the hill. Okay.
Okay.
So I ended up grabbing a couple of the parquet margarine bowls. You know, my mom would give the Cool Whip bowls. She'd give those to us because blackberries stain dishes. So we get a couple of margarine bowls, and my cousin Jerry and I, instead of taking the road, we went out his back door of his house and cut through this little cutaway. It was like a little throughway. At the bottom of this hill near the meadow where I was picking the berries, there was our pump house. We had well water. We had a spring-fed well. And so we had a pump that would pump water up the hill. So we had to have power to the pump. So we had a cutaway where we had some poles, and we had some power lines running down there to power the pump house. Well, it's a nice little path. It's cut through the woods. It's a path of least resistance. So my cousin Jerry and I went down this path. And when you come out on the path, you'd have to turn to the left to get to the berry thicket. I was telling you about how you could take the road into the right. Yeah. Well, you'd have to come down from the left. So my cousin Jerry and I are picking berries, and we're throwing them in the bowl and we're eating them. And you know, when you're a kid, if y'all have never picked have y'all ever picked berries?
Yes.
Oh, yeah. Ever gone blackberry picking? Oh, you know, when you're a kid, it's like, you know, 2 in the mouth, 1 in the bowl. You always eat more in your kitchen, you know. So that's what we're doing, and it's a summer day. It's a beautiful day, and we are, you know, carefree. We have nothing to worry about in the world. And how this berry thicket was set up. If you've seen berry thickets grow, you know, they'll grow out, and then sometimes they'll kind of crop in. There'll be like a little cove, and then they grow back out, you know, and there's little in and outs there where you can walk around the berry thickets and pick berries and come back out. And so my cousin Jerry is picking on one of these outcroppings of blackberries, and then it would cove in, and then it would come back out, and I'm picking on that one. So he's to my left. And we're picking and eating and picking and eating. And Jerry was, we didn't know each other our whole lives. He was a step cousin. His his mother married my mother's brother, so I didn't know him my whole life. And this was the first summer that he had lived, that his parents had gotten married earlier that year, and this was the first summer that he lived at this property. So I didn't really know him well, okay? And so he and I are picking berries, and all of a sudden he goes into kind of like this meltdown where he starts, like a little kid, he starts saying, I want to go home, I want to go home, I want to go home.
Oh, right.
And I'm looking at him like, and this all happens pretty quickly. And I'm like, I don't know how to react to it because I don't know what's bothering him. Well, he finally just drops his berry bowl and he runs past me up the trail that I told you about, catches that tractor road and runs off. Okay. And I'm like, what is wrong with this kid? I have, so I kind of, he hightailed it out of there and he was upset, and I have no idea. I know now what it was, but I have no idea at the time what it was. So in my head, I'm like, what a weird kid, more berries for me. So I keep picking. And, I always describe it this way so people can kind of understand how things happened the way they did. Because I've looked at this, it's my most vivid memory and I've had to look back on it a lot. So, some of my description is speculation, but I'll tell you that it's speculation, okay? But so I'm picking, and as you know, when you're picking blackberries, when you see a little cluster of berries, you reach in there to pick them, and you have your hand like this, and you just tug down on those berries, and when they're ripe, they'll fall into your hand. And if they're not, they won't. So you can actually reach in there. What I was good at is saying, oh, there's 4 berries. And I could reach into that cluster and pull down. But as I'm pulling down on that cluster of berries, my eyeballs are already looking at the next cluster to go for because my cousin and I are having a berry picking contest. We want to see who can fill our bowl the fastest, So it's one of these, speed picking. You know what I'm saying? So you're picking and you're throwing and you're picking and you're throwing. But, at this point, Jerry has gone home. And I don't know why. And I'm like, more berries to me. So I'm kind of taking my time, but I'm still picking and looking at the next cluster, because you got to be real careful picking berries. They have thorns in them, and you got to kind of slither your hand through thorns to get to them. So you got to know, you got to anticipate where you're going next and know how you're going to get to them, especially if they're big, fat, juicy berries, because I love blackberries. I ain't kidding you. I love them. So as I'm picking through the berries, I don't know how much time has passed. Again, I was a kid, but it wasn't long. It was maybe 15 or 20 minutes at the most has passed since my cousin had his meltdown. So as I'm picking, I hear a real loud whistle to my right in the direction towards where Jerry ran. Now, I'm not a very good whistler when I try to be, but it kind of went like this. But it was louder, okay? It was like, low to high.
It sounded like a human whistle or maybe a bird or some other wild.
Sound like a human whistle. Okay. Like somebody trying to get your attention. Okay. But it was like, hey, get over here. It was like real loud. Yeah. And it was a little bit longer than an instant whistle.
Okay. And did this
I'm assuming it's human because my first thought is, knock it off, Jerry. I know that's you. Knock it off.
Sure.
So in my head, I'm assuming it's a human. So I know it's not a bird. You know what I mean? But it sounds like a human. So I hear the whistle. I say, knock it off, quit it, whatever I said to him. And I go back to picking berries. So as I'm picking, I hear the whistle again. And as I told you, I'm reaching my hand in to get a cluster of berries. And I hear the whistle, and so I turn to my right towards where the sound of the whistle is, and when I reach my hand into the thicket, I touch hair. And so I pull my hand back immediately. And when I tell this story, I always say the same thing. When I've picked berries, I've touched all sorts of stuff in berry thickets. I put my hands right into birds' nests to touch baby birds. I've touched snakes sunning themselves on the vines. I've touched birds. I've touched a lot of stuff, but I'd never touched hair before.
When you said that, the hair on the back of my neck stood up, like straight.
When I said that I touched hair,
that
well, you should be me. Every hair on my body stands up when I talk about it.
I bet.
What's that?
It does. So when I touched the hair, I immediately pull my hand back and I step back from the bush because the thicket is on an outcropping, but I can see light through the backside. It's not so thick that I can't see the sun shining in the little cover area. You know what I'm saying? Behind the bush, and I see this dark figure. And again, I was a kid, but I'm speculating when I say this. I had to be maybe 7 to 10 feet away from the berry thicket itself, and I'm maybe 8 to 12 feet away from this dark figure that's in the thicket. So as I pull my hand back, I'm looking at this figure and I'm trying to discern what it is that I'm seeing. And so I would lean to my left to try to look around the thicket of the berry, to see the other side of whatever this is. And by the way, this thing is in the thicket and it's doing this rocking type thing. Okay, I want to explain. I want to get that out there. It's doing this rocking thing, and every time I would lean to try to look at it, when I leaned to my left, it would lean to its left, and it was almost as if it was pushing its face or body into the thicket, so I couldn't see it. So I'm still having a hard time looking at this thing, trying to figure out what it is. So I look down and I see the 3 outside toes on his right foot. Okay, I see the toes, and I see they were like chimp toes. They look like chimp toes. I could see flesh and hair, but it was mostly flesh on the top. The hair was on the top, but on the outside, towards where the pads start on the bottom, it was flesh, and it was a gray color. It was a gray colored flesh. Okay, so I see the foot. And I see the ankle, and I'm looking at it, and as I'm looking at it, I realize that it looks like a human foot. Okay, that's what it looks like. It doesn't look like an animal, and I can see where it's squatted down, and it has its arms between its legs as it's squatting. Picture like a silverback or something. It's the only way I can describe it. And so I can see where the calf of his leg and the thigh of his leg are squeezed together, okay, as he's squatting. And I can see its shoulder from about the elbow up. I see that big, massive muscle back here. Wow. And I can't see the
from this creature when you're sizing it up.
Again, probably 8 to 12 feet, somewhere in that vicinity. I'm not sure, but
that's pretty close.
Yeah. It's close enough where and as a kid, I'm looking at this thing, and again, I'm not really sure what it is. I see the foot, but I'm like, hey, that looks like people. That looks like a people foot, is what I said, Yeah. And I see the shoulder, and like I said. And then when I realize what it is that I'm looking at, because it all, the light bulb clicked on, so to speak, all the air just left my body, where I was like,
So, had you ever heard of Bigfoot or Sasquatch before this moment?
Oh yeah, sure.
Okay. So, when you realized what you were looking at, was it at that moment you thought maybe you were looking at Bigfoot?
I thought I was looking at King Kong.
Oh, yeah, I bet.
You know what? We had somebody watching actually asked a question. Did you notice a really foul odor at all, or do you remember?
No, that's a very common question that I've had to field, and no smell. But when I touched it, it felt like horse mane. Like a horse mane,
Really okay.
It was very coarse.
It was soft but coarse. Yeah, but it was like horse mane. That's the only way I can describe it. But so when I look at this thing and I see it and I realize what it is that I'm looking at, and all the wind leaves my body, I'm frozen. I wet my pants, and I couldn't move, and so when I realize what it is that I'm seeing, my fight or flight mechanism kicked in, and I dropped my bowl and I ran home. And my mother was home. I don't remember where my dad was, but my mom was home. And I'm terrified. And I run into the house and I tell my mom, I've seen a monster. I've seen Bigfoot. And as I said, my parents are very pragmatic. I always describe them like this. There was no time for silliness, okay? There's no such thing as Bigfoot.
Yeah.
You know, their idea of monsters was Hunger and Hitler. You understand what I mean?
Yeah.
So, you know, a big hairy hominid in our backyard is not, you know, that just isn't didn't register with them. So when I told my mother I saw a monster, I saw a Bigfoot, she immediately said, you know, tried to discount it, like, no, you didn't. You probably saw a dog or a deer. And I'm like, Ma, I touched it. I saw it. It was right in front of me. And again, my mother was like, no, you didn't. And so my dad came home and, you know, it was discussed, but it wasn't discussed much. And I just had to, you know, my parents did the best they could. I don't hold anything against my parents, but as a kid, you know, you go to your parents looking for comfort and safety. And when you tell them that you've seen something, and they tell you you haven't, that you didn't, you know, I can't describe what it's like to try to process something like that. You know, I couldn't. Yeah. And I was so.
I was going to ask you, do you, and this is just kind of my mind working here, do you think that, you know, maybe they just kind of squashed the subject so quickly because maybe they knew something and they didn't want to expose you to it any further?
No.
Okay.
No, not my folks.
Okay.
Not at all.
I mean, if they knew something, they'd be like, yeah, you saw him. Scary as hell.
Yeah.
Okay.
They'd probably tell me not to talk about it.
Sure. Okay.
Because, you know, like I said, the farmhouse that we lived in prior to living on this property, you know, I've always seen things. I've been one of those guys where weirdness has always been drawn to me, you know.
Really?
And when I was a little boy, I used to see a ghost in our old house. I used to see a World War I soldier dressed in his formalist with a big hat. I always think of Sherman Potter. Remember Colonel Potter from MASH? Remember the hat he'd wear when he'd get up on the horse? That's exactly what that guy was wearing.
Let's not talk about ghosts.
I'm just saying that when I was a kid, I used to see these things, and I tell my mother be like, "Oh, you're just dreaming. You had a bad dream, you know, that kind of thing." So that's when I was 3 or 4 years old. Now I'm 10 or 11 at this point, up to the Bigfoot thing. So what ended up happening is I ended up getting I don't know what you want to call it, a virus. No, I don't know what you want to call it. Where I have a traumatic PTSD-like nightmare from it. Okay.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
And you know, even my encounter itself, again, was not terrifying. It wasn't threatening to me. It wasn't in any sense of the word. The animal did nothing to contribute to my fright, but just be what it was. Okay. But in my dream, the Bigfoot in my dream wants to eat me, and I had this dream nightly, and I would wake up screaming, crying, sweating, and my mother would come into my room. What's wrong? And I'd say, Bigfoot, and my mom would say, you've got to stop this. You're going to drive yourself crazy. You got to stop thinking about this stuff. And you know, how do you stop dreaming about stuff? You know what I mean? So again, this was in the summer of I got to grab a smoke, guys. It's a little emotional, so bear with me.
That's fine.
But that was the summer of '81, and as I said, we used to harvest firewood out of those woods, and my dad would say, we're going to the woods, and I didn't mind going to the woods prior to that, but after that happened, it was a constant battle between my dad and I, because I was terrified to go to the woods.
Yeah.
So one time when we went to, I was 11, 10 or 11. I'm not real sure.
And for how long did you have these terrifying dreams after the encounter?
Oh, I still have them.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah, I don't have them as often, but I still have them. It's not it's not something I've shaken. I still have. That's what kind of brought me into the Bigfoot deal. Is you know, I finally got tired of being scared, and I you know,
The demon you eat
but
makes you stronger.
Yeah, you got to
right,
kind of get it out
right.
and deal with it. And the fact that when you were talking about, it didn't really do anything like threatening or anything like that, and you could make out the figure, but you didn't like see all the details. It's almost one of those things where what you don't see makes it even more terrifying, because that's where your brain just starts working overtime and filling in the blanks.
One of the things that I wanted to tell you that really sunk home to me how big this thing was hit the top. I could see the top of his knees once I figured out what it was. I was telling you about the arm and his legs. I could see the top of his knees, and I was at about near eye level as the top of his knees. And I'm a 10 or 11-year-old kid. That gives you an idea how big. Now, he wasn't bulky. He wasn't a bulky. He was built like Akeem Olajuwon. That's the only way I can describe him. He's built like Akeem. He had big, long. You can see the muscle definition in his arms, but he wasn't massive. He had a massive muscle on his shoulder and whatnot. But as far as what I could make out, it didn't look like he was. He wasn't Goliath, but he was big. He was tall. And
any noise at all?
Kind of maybe like a grunt, kind of like when a pig is written around written around for something to eat. Maybe something like that, but nothing. Like I said, nothing threatening at all. But this nightmare stayed with me. Now, what I wanted to tell you is that when my father would argue with me about going to the woods, I would finally, relent and go to the woods with him, but I would hate it. I'd stand right by the truck, or I'd get under the truck, like, I had any kind of sense of safety or anything, But my job was, when they would lop off branches and whatnot, my job was to grab the branches and pile them up. So they'd drop a tree, they'd lop off all the branches, I'd run out and pile them, and then run back under and get under the truck. And I was my head was on a swivel, always looking at the woods. Well, fast forward to the following summer. My father died that next summer, and and my mother grieved very deeply for my dad. They had known each other since the second grade. They'd been married 28 years at this point. So my mother she just grieved deeply. She kind of dropped out for a while. She didn't go nutty, but she just grieved deeply, and I had to basically tell myself that I have to stuff these things and let go of these childish things, because my mother doesn't need the stress. So I learned to stuff it, and I stuffed it for a long time. Mm-hmm. And I had some friends in school that I went with that they claimed they had one on their property, and they're very serious about it. And they would so I could talk to them about it, but pretty much I didn't talk about it, because you always catch ridicule. People make fun of you.
What age were you when you found somebody else you could talk to about it?
12, 13,
So a couple years later.
It's a small town, so right. It's a small town, so I went to school with these kids. They were a big family. There was probably 5 kids in the family, and they rode the same school bus as me, and I was friends with all of them. And one of them was a year younger than me. Her and I were good friends, and then she had a sister that was a couple years older than me, and she and I were good friends, and they would always talk to me about it. Not that we talked about it all the time, but we would talk about it.
You felt comfortable talking about it with each other.
Was their experience at all similar?
Oh, they used to feed it. They used to say, we leave them out. We leave food out for it and everything. Yeah. I mean, that's
really.
Oh yeah. Now, I stay in touch with the one girl that I told you that was a year younger than me. And she was actually a member of my group that I told you I no longer have, and that kind of thing. She lives in South Carolina now, but she used to live in Georgia. But she knows that I don't mention their names or anything, when I talk about the family. But she knows that I've discussed it, and she's still, to this day, she's still, stoic as far as we had one of them. They named him Critter. They called him Critter. So now what's an interesting thing about it. I found this out much later in life, obviously. Here in the last 10 years I found this out, but my hometown, Sasquatch Harbor, there's actually, if you go on the BFRO website and you go under Jefferson County, New York, they'll pull up one account that's been listed or has been, logged into their database. And it's an account of a farmer in the area there. There's a little outside of the Sasquatch Harbor, a little town called Ellisburg, where a farmer who's described as being, of the utmost integrity or that kind of thing, stating that he saw a wild man on his farm. Well, they got a posse chasing him. This was in the 1800s. I found out that account was the very first wild man encounter ever printed in an American newspaper, which is kind of cool,
Yeah.
But there's a history of the area there. And I'm probably about 3 hours away from Whitehall, New York, where you've heard of Whitehall. They have a lot of activity in Whitehall. But New York, upstate New York is a hotbed. I'm telling you, it's a hotbed.
And see, like I said, I'm interested in Bigfoot. I haven't, I'll admit, I have a podcast, but I don't know everything. And I haven't done a lot of research.
I don't know everything either.
I haven't done a lot of research on Sasquatch. I didn't know that upstate New York was a hotbed for that, I was thinking like Pacific Northwest, Washington, Oregon, and then down, you're kind of at the base of the Appalachian Mountains, correct?
Right. I'm not too far. I'm probably about an hour from the trailhead.
Okay. And I had heard that kind of that area is, I don't know if you would consider it a hotbed, but it's also active.
Yeah, I would. I say it all the time. It's a hotbed. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but they're everywhere. People ask me, well, how many are there? And I'm like, if you can see the stars in your yard, look up in the sky. How many stars do you see? Usually you see 20, 30 stars right above you, if you're lucky, unless you live out in the boonies where you have no street lights or whatnot.
Yeah.
But that's about how many you can probably figure are in a county the size of Gwinnett, where I'm at. I'm in Gwinnett County. This is the largest county in Georgia. But Atlanta, there's a spot down there in Atlanta, back down towards the city. There's a park that's on each side of the Chattahoochee. The park's located on each side, and it's got a walking trail, bike trail. You can, put your canoe or kayak. Huh?
Stone Mountain.
It's not far from Stone Mountain. No, it's Sandy Springs. Sandy Springs.
Yeah.
There's a park right there, and I've walked that trail, and I get off trail. I don't like trails. I like to get off trail, And I found TP structures and tree breaks, and I found one structure where you could sit behind it, you could see all the traffic on the river, and you could see all the traffic on the trail and never be spotted. Nobody even knew I was there. So and if all you got to do is just, all you got to do is if you drive out of the entrance of that park, man, there's office buildings and concrete. It's right there near the Spaghetti Junction. It's not, but it's, the wooded areas all over Atlanta. Atlanta is actually known as the city in the woods or city in the forest, but they're all over. And a lot of people scoff at the idea of urban Sasquatch, but they're everywhere. I'm telling you.
Georgia is nothing but pine trees. No, the northern part of Georgia. Because it gets depressing because I went from the wide open spaces of the West. And then when I was in Georgia, it's just all trees. And so you feel you can't see above. You can't see the distance. You can't see the horizon. And that does something to you psychologically.
Yeah. And just really quickly, we had a couple people ask that I think they missed the beginning. The encounter that Jason had took place in upstate New York.
That's correct.
In 1980, correct?
81. I think it was 81.
Okay. Yeah,
my dad died in 82. So
okay, we had a few people ask, so I just wanted to answer that question for him.
Yeah.
Was your very first encounter the only encounter that you've had?
It's the only visual I've gotten as far as a definitive. That's what it is. As definitive as I could say it was as a bulky squatting creature in the berry bush. I never saw its face. I never saw, and like I said, as soon as I could compose myself to run out of there, I ran out of there. But, what I was going to tell you is that even when I tell that story, I tell it a lot because it's therapeutic for me. And I have no reason to perpetuate a hoax, number one. I have no reason to tell this story, I don't. I don't like to go on public venues and tell people that I pissed my pants.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? But I do because it's therapeutic for me. The more I talk about it, number one, I still have the nightmare, but I don't have it as often. And I think it's because I talk about it and I process it. You know what I mean? Now, as far as encounters are concerned, there's an area that we camp here. We used to do a twice a year camp out, spring and fall, but schedules and COVID and all that kind of mucked it up. But there's an area that we camp now where it's hot for Sasquatch, but it's hot for a lot of other things too. There's a lot of wild. It's land that the Cherokee and the Creek Indians used to battle over for hundreds of years. So there's a lot of blood spill on the land, a lot of blood energy, if you know what I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And the Bigfoot they come right into the camp. They'll come right into your campsite. They come right into your campsite, get your stuff. Yeah. And what I have to do is I have to put my earbuds in and listen to a podcast or something because I don't want to hear them in the camp because I'll poop my sleeping bag is what I'll do, Because don't get me wrong, I'm still tremendously terrified by these things.
Yeah.
But I still go in the woods.
Yeah.
I didn't do that. Anything that had to do after I had my encounter as a kid, anything that had to do with the woods, like I was telling you about chasing squirrels and rabbits and all that stopped. I stopped going in the woods. I stopped camping. I stopped fishing. I stopped doing anything that would put me in the woods where I couldn't see, like he was saying, couldn't see what was around me. I stopped doing. And then, we're going to fast forward to my adult life. I'm about 40 years old at this point. I think it's 2009. I'm sitting in church and I have children and my youngest son was 3 or 4 at the time. He's 15, almost 16 now. But he was in a church program, and I was sitting in the back pew of the sanctuary, and there was these 2 old guys talking behind me. And I wasn't eavesdropping. I just happened to hear their conversation. And one of them said, "Oh, did you hear somebody saw a Bigfoot up at Indian Boundary Campground or something like that?" And it caught my ear, and I was listening to them banter back and forth about it just a little bit. But what happened with my head is I went right back to my kid. Went right back to my kid size again, and I started having the nightmares again. So here I am, 40 years old, waking up, screaming, sweating, scared of Bigfoot, and it pissed me off. I got tired of it. Yeah. Now I'm divorced now. I'm in a committed relationship with a great woman now, but my last marriage was a very difficult marriage. And at this point in time where I started having the nightmares again, my ex-wife and I were in intense couples therapy. And when I mean intense, I mean like she would go one day of the week, I would go one day of the week, and then we would go one day of the week. Every week, 3 days a week, this is what we dealt with, So on one of my individual sessions, I went to the therapist, he's a great guy, and I said, "Look, I got to talk to you about something that has nothing to do with what we're here for, okay?" And I'd had a nightmare just a couple of days prior to this, and when I have them, they stay with me. They linger with me. I don't know how to describe it, but I'm terribly shaken by it. It's the only way I can describe it, okay? So the terror, it just stays with me, and because the dreams are very vivid. So I tell this therapist about what happened to me as a kid. I really step out on a limb here, talking to a mental health professional about this kind of thing, and he didn't discount me. He didn't negate what I had to say. He suggested that I maybe try to find somebody or other people that have had similar occurrences or whatnot, and maybe talk about it. So for the first time ever, at 40 years old, I get on Google and I Google Bigfoot, and then it brought me to Facebook. And then it brought me to groups, and I started getting in with, people and this is how I slowly developed what I do now, my researching and experiencing. I call it experiencing. I don't go in the woods with equipment. I don't take microphones and parabolic mics and trail cams. And, even though I shared that commercial with you, it shows me setting up a trail cam in that commercial.
Yeah,
I don't do that stuff.
We're gonna show your commercial here at some point towards the end. It's kind of funny. It's kind of funny that you bring up, like you were talking about like all the equipment and you go on like a hunt, right?
Bad word, but yeah.
What do you think? Because I mean, there's these TV shows on like Discovery and History and whatnot. I'll be honest with you. I think that there is something out there. I haven't had any experience myself, but I do believe that there's something out there. But when I watch these shows, I almost look at it as, okay, these people are setting shit up. What are they doing? I mean, they're really like, they're bringing the entertainment value, and yes, it's entertaining, but the people that are out there doing it in like a really public fashion, I think they're full of crap. What do you think?
I agree with you 100%. Okay. I mean, I'm not going to discount certain shows and whatnot because I'm friends with people that are on those shows.
Yeah.
Over the course of the last 10 years, I've gone to Bigfoot conferences and I've been blessed to become part of circles of people that everybody know. I mean, I know Bob Gimlin. I know Cliff Barackman. I know several of the Bigfooters that people know. You know what I mean? I've met them, talked with them, and that kind of thing. And again, it is for entertainment value, and there's nothing wrong with it. But what I always try to tell people is that what you see on those shows isn't how we do it. And it's not how my group does it.
Yeah.
I mean, we go on night walks.
Experience is way more interesting to me than watching some guys go on adventure through the woods for 3 seasons and find nothing.
Storytelling.
And I mean, I think that obviously there's got to be some truth in these types of shows that are out there.
There is.
I don't discount that at all, but I mean, you got to remember it's TV. They want ratings, so
I mean,
they're gonna juice it up a little bit. You know what I mean? And I feel like it almost. And I don't know if you feel this way, Jason, but I almost feel like the kind of like the grand spectacle that they've created, I almost feel like it puts somebody like yourself where you've had this experience and you've had to deal with it your entire life. I almost feel like it like delegitimizes or is trying to delegitimize what you've gone through.
It creates a comedic relief for the naysayers and the skeptics. Look at these. And see, you're right. I don't get too caught up with that kind of stuff. I try real hard to stay out of it. But in the years that I have done this, I've learned a lot about them as far as what they do and things like that. I haven't learned enough to say that I know anything about them. The more I learn, I mean, it's a cliche, but the more I learn, the less I know. And it's one of those things where, go ahead.
What's your favorite Bigfoot movie?
Letters from the Big Man.
What was it
Ever
called?
heard of that one? What was it called? Letters from the Big Man.
No,
It's either Letters from the Big Man or Letters to the Big Man.
I've never heard.
That movie's about a female hiker that goes out in the woods and she's being observed and watched by a Bigfoot, and they become friends. It's cool.
Wow.
I'm gonna have.
And my second favorite is Harry and the Hendersons.
Yes,
that's a close second.
Yes,
that's a given. That's a given.
Did you watch Killing Hitler and then Killing Bigfoot?
I did. I thought it was a good movie. I wish they'd socked a little bit more budget into the creature. The creature looked like Chaka on a crack binge or something, Remember Chaka from Land of the Lost?
Yeah.
That's what he looked like. It was terrible. I'm like, damn you, Sam Elliott. Why did you get me into this movie just to leave me hanging with that disgrace of a beast, man? That was terrible. And I don't like the monster depictions. Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm not saying that these things can't be monstrous, but I'm not one of these guys that.
Yeah, that was
the killing machine type of.
It's like they smeared someone with Elder's glue, and then they took whatever fell on the floor of a barber shop and just said, "Hey, you're fucking."
Slapped it on there. Yeah. I mean, there are cases. There's definitely there's a lot of accounts out there where they have been aggressive. There's the 8 Canyon incident. It happened in like the 1920s. 8 Canyon incident where some miners they took a shot at one during the day, and then they were attacked all night long by a group of them, rocks thrown in on their sod roof, and doors getting caved in or trying to get caved in, and it was. But 8 Canyon, yeah, that's a pretty brutal one, but I don't think that these are. I have gotten into another discussion about this very first thing this morning. I feel that anybody that thinks that these things are just a North American ape, they're far off. These things are not an ape. This is not an ape. This is not a dumb, stinky, stupid beast.
These things are beings.
Yeah.
Uber intelligent. Uber intelligent. Alpha predators. There's a reason when you see one. I mean, I've had people say when I describe to them my encounter as a kid, I've had people say to me, "Oh, that's the only thing that happened, and you're that scared? What were you thinking, man? That wasn't scary at all." And you have no idea. Also people say you've seen Bigfoot. You had your cell phone. Why didn't you take a picture? You have no idea. There's a reason we have a primal fear. There's a reason why when I realized what I saw, it wasn't just because I was a kid that saw a beast. It's something in our DNA that makes us to our core terrified of these things because they have histories. There's several native tribes that'll tell legends of these things scooping up people out of the villages and eating them, and I'm just saying that.
So, what do you make of opposing theories that they're actually friendly and mean no ill will?
I won't say that they're all like that, but I can fall into that category very easily. I won't say they're your forest friends of the night. I'm not there. You know what I mean? I'm not saying they're your buddies in the woods, but there are people that have habitual interaction with them.
I would kind of think it would be more of a relationship where it's like if you treat them with respect, they're going to treat you with respect.
That's correct.
Like your experience. I mean, it seems obvious that this thing wasn't hunting you as prey.
Yeah.
No.
It was like curious.
He acted pretty benignly towards you.
Yeah. I mean, it was curious and it wasn't threatening.
Right.
And you treat it with respect, so therefore, it didn't do anything to you.
As I said, I looked at this in retrospect a lot, and again, this is speculation. But what I think was happening is that when I told you that my cousin Jerry and I came down that cutaway for the power lines, when we came down that way, I think we kind of caught him off guard, and he had nowhere to go when we hit that berry because we hit the berry thicket pretty quickly. And I think that whistling that I was hearing was another one trying to get my attention somehow so that this one could scoot away or go, because there was no way that thing was going to be able to walk through the berry thicket. These thickets were 40 to 60 years old. I mean, they were established berry thickets that my grandfather had planted, and they weren't going anywhere. You know what I'm saying? So I've speculated, again, I'm no expert, but I don't think they were there to get me. I think that if they wanted me, they could have got me very easily. But I think what happened was this thing was doing what we were doing. He was chowing down on some berries, and he got
surprised.
He got sloppy. I think he got sloppy, and it's a rare occurrence. They're not sloppy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure when they're spotted, they tell themselves, "Shit, I was spotted. Damn it! What was that?" Because they're not sloppy.
Did your cousin ever say anything about it?
Yeah, we talked about it. A few years later, I was a senior. I just graduated out of high school, and he and I used to have 3-wheelers and 4-wheelers, snowmobiles. That's the way I grew up. And he and I used to sneak off into the woods on our 3-wheelers and go smoke cigarettes so our parents wouldn't catch us. And on one of those smoking sessions, speaking of smoking, I'm going for another one. On one of those smoking sessions, he and I talked about it, but I brought it up. He answered the question, and then we didn't talk about it anymore.
Yeah.
And my cousin, now I'm not going to sit here. Now this is something else I was going to tell you is that, through my process dealing with my folks telling me that, I didn't see what I saw and having to stuff these things, I learned how to stuff emotions. Anything that affected me emotionally, I learned how to stuff. And this carried on into my adult years. I mean, I developed a taste for drugs and alcohol because anything that I had to deal with emotionally, that's how I dealt with it. Now, again, I say this all the time. I'm not blaming Bigfoot for all my adult problems, but how I processed
Why not?
things
Why not? Everyone.
in my adult, because I'm a self-made man, and I made my own mess. But my abilities to deal with things on an emotional level was deeply affected by this, especially. And again, I don't hold anything against my folks, but my folks did the best they could. They didn't know how. When you haven't, when you're told you didn't see what you really saw, as far as they're concerned, there's nothing to be scared of. But they don't know where I'm going because I know what I saw, and once you see something, you can't unsee it. No matter how many people tell you didn't see it. And like I was saying, I have a history with chemicals, drugs, and whatnot. Of all the drugs I've done, and I've done a lot of things. I'm not going to go into everything I've done, but anything I tried twice and liked, I pretty much did a lot of. But in all of that experimenting and using and abusing all that, I never once saw a Bigfoot.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I never once saw a Bigfoot.
Yep.
I was a kid when I saw this, so but I'm just saying, even in my adult years, I never saw a Bigfoot. Wasn't looking for one either. Don't get me wrong, but I'm just saying that you can't contribute. A lot of people want to attribute these sightings to people because they'll be camping and like, were you drinking? Oh yeah, we had a few beers, but so what?
But you were 10.
Dude,
right.
People don't understand.
Right.
I think that drugs remove you from reality. So that, I've never had a spiritual experience when I was fucked up because I'm so far away from my being in touch with myself and what's going on.
Great.
When you're you do that because you want to go away from it. Right? The only thing that I've ever experienced that put me in touch with things was probably smoking weed, or if I'm touching the wall. If I'm touching the wall, then it was a really good pill.
Right. I don't make any qualms about it. I smoke weed every day.
Yeah,
I smoke weed every day. But see, another thing that I learned here in the last few years that I didn't realize, I've always been able to do it. I was telling you about me being sensitive to seeing things as a kid. Is that I've learned that, now again, this is another thing it's kind of become cliche and it's kind of become the in thing to say, but I've learned that I'm an empath. And I didn't know that what an empath was until just a few years ago, but I can feel other people's energies. I can sense things, that when things are going wrong, 500 miles away, and I have certain senses and abilities, and some of it can get out of hand. So I smoke weed because it lowers my vibration. So I don't, because listen, when you're an empath, and I'm just now learning how to set up a bubble around myself where I don't take on other people's emotions. But if you don't get any rest if you.
After this, could you share your email? Because I'd like to email you some things.
Sure, absolutely.
It's interesting that you bring up, the fact that you're an empath, because I feel, the way that I think is like being an empath is not really something that is, yes, you develop it as you get older because you learn how to like harness it, but it's something that you're born with.
Sure. We're all born with it.
Yeah,
we're all born with it. Yeah.
Do you think that, because I mean, there's also a lot of speculation out there that Sasquatch is like a very spiritual type of animal. Do you think that maybe that had something to do with your encounter because it sensed that in you?
Yeah, well,
I know that contradicts the whole idea of you guys kind of sneaking up on him and catching him off guard.
As a kid, yeah. Well, here's what I was going to get at. I was telling you about this camping area that we go to. We used to camp at twice a year. Well, a few years ago, we had Bob Gimlin came down and camped with us. Do you know who Bob Gimlin is?
I do. Real quickly, the video that we showed earlier of a Sasquatch,
right, that's the Patterson Gimlin film, right?
Across the creek. That's the Patterson Gimlin film. It's probably the most famous Bigfoot, most famous
Bigfoot footage. Yep. Well, I became friends with Bob at the Ohio Bigfoot Conference a year or so before this, but our group, several of us were good friends with him, and he came down to Georgia and camped with us one October. Well, this weekend, this particular weekend of the camp out with Bob, what we would do is we usually camp from Thursday to Sunday. And what I would do on Sunday is I usually have my dog Cash with me. And I would usually break down my campsite, pack everything away in the car, and then I'd take a walk up this one trail that we always hit. So Cash can get a little bit of exercise in and get his business in, because we got about a 2-hour drive. This place is 2 hours from where I live. So I'm walking up this trail with Cash, and Cash he's free roaming. I got his leash in my hand, but he's roaming. And but he's right next to me on the trail at this point. And as I'm climbing up this trail, I keep seeing a black flash in my peripheral vision to my right. And the only way, what I'm thinking I'm seeing is a crow flying from tree to tree. Okay, I'm just seeing a little blip, a little flash. Yeah. So I see this flash, and I see where it stopped, and I'm like, I knew something was fucking with me. Okay, I'm just gonna say I knew something was messing with me, and so I don't give it much thought. But what I decide to do is I'm gonna pretend that I'm walking, and I'm gonna go into the motions like I'm getting ready to take a step, and then I'm gonna freeze and I'm gonna stare right at this thing where I'm looking at, because I can see part of it, okay? It's kind of leaning by a tree, and I can see part of it. Now, again, I don't know what it is that I'm seeing. So I do this motion. I make a step, and then I turn my head. Well, I catch it ducking, okay? So it ducks down. Now, all I see is a very, very tippy top, very crown top of its head, okay? Not much of it. I just see a very little bit of it. But when I saw it duck, I had an aha moment. And under my breath, I wasn't whispering it, but under my breath, Cass sitting right next to me, I say, no fucking way. Just like that. Holy shit. Like, no fucking way. I did it. So now this is going to get a little wonky here, okay? But this is what happened. All of a sudden, I hear in my head, I hear my own voice going, no, 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 no. And I'm like, what the hell? And then it splits into 2 tones. So I'm hearing 2 tones. Then I'm hearing 4 tones. And it's a harmonics that I'm hearing it, and it's split, and I'm hearing it in my head. I'm not hearing it around me. I'm looking at my dog to see if he's being affected by anything. He's looking around like, what the hell are we standing here for? And I'm a musician, so I'm paying particular attention to the tones, okay? Because they're fantastic. And they're going to my heart rate. So they're going, no, 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 no. And there are all these multiple tones on different levels. And I'm not kidding you. Off in the distance, I hear this squirrely one going, no, no, no. So it's like I don't know if you've ever, there used to be this stuff that you could get. I haven't seen it in years, but it's called Locker Room. Or Rush, where you can open the jar and you can take a hoof of it and it'd make your head go boom, 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 boom. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I know what those are.
They used to call them poppers. They used to call them poppers.
Poppers.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, when that does that to your head,
yeah, amyl nitrate. I know exactly.
When that does that to your head, you can feel your heart rate, and that's what's going on with my head. What I'm feeling. And I'm hearing these tones, but another thing that is happening, guys, is my entire body is shaking to beat the band. My teeth are chattering, and I'm still hearing this note. And I don't know how long a time went, but I'm going to say it was a good 15 to 30 seconds that I'm feeling this full-on vibration, and then it just stops. Okay, and it's just like somebody turned the volume down in the entire woods. Everything just went quiet. Because I've got the Gregorian chants in my head at one point, and then it just stops. Well, I'm like, I was spooked. I was scared. I ain't gonna lie. So I'm like, come on, Cash.
Yeah, there's a book called The Beautiful Side of Evil. You need to read that book, The Beautiful Side of Evil by Dr. Joanna Michelson.
All right. Well, we'll exchange that when I send you my email. So I took took the leash back on Cash, and I get to the car, and we drive home. And guys, I don't remember a bit of the drive. I still feel funky, and it's a 2-hour drive. I don't remember anything. I get home. I discover that I've got some ticks on me. Okay, I got ticks on me, and Cash has got ticks on him. So my pulling ticks off of me. I had 4 or 5 on me, but I don't feel right. I feel like I've got a fever. I don't feel right. So I'm thinking, do I got Lyme disease? All this stuff. The only way I can tell you how it felt is it felt like somebody had broken me down on a molecular level and then put me back together and either added something extra or took something out. Okay, I just didn't feel right. And this thing, I'm just going to tell you, I still feel that same feeling. I still have it. But here's what's interesting, okay? I was telling you about the empath stuff. This is right around the time that somebody said, oh, this is what you are. I'm going to traffic. I'm going to work, okay? And it's Atlanta, so you know what traffic's like. So I'm in the left lane at a stoplight, and there's 3 lanes. There's a left lane, a middle lane, and a turning lane on the right. So I'm in the left lane, and it's a beautiful day. Traffic's good. I got my coffee. The radio's going. I'm great. And all of a sudden, I feel this wave of grief. Tremendous grief comes over me, and I start crying, okay? And I feel sad and wimpy. I feel like I'm going to start blubbering, and I'm like, and the radio doesn't have anything emotional on it, or I wasn't thinking anything emotional. I'm like, where the hell is this coming from? Well, I take my sunglasses off, and I'm wiping my eyes, and I get a little self-conscious. So I look around to see if anybody sees me crying, and I look over at the car sitting next to me, and I'm getting the goosebumps again, Michael. But I look over at the car next to me, and in the car is this 20-something-year-old girl, and she is crying like her grandmother's died, her boyfriend's broke up with her, whatever. And when I see her, it wasn't like a real actual bell ring, but it was like almost like I got like a surge, like that's who I'm feeling. I got kind of a buzz is the only way I can describe it. It felt like my body was buzzing when I saw who it was. Well, but it's like I live in a house full of females, okay? I have a 10-year-old, a 13-year-old, and my girlfriend. And I won't tell you exactly how old she is, but she's not 10 or 13. But I can walk into this house, and I can tell when the girls have been arguing, and there doesn't have to be a sound in the house. I can walk in, and I can feel the energy, and I'll go, all right, what's going on? Nobody wants to tell me. And I can hear, I don't want to go into the hearing things, but something happened to me, and what somebody told me was whatever I saw on the trail gave me an upload. They uploaded me. So you got uploaded, man. I said, what do you mean? I said, they gave you some information. And I said, who? And he said, I don't know who, but they gave you information. And I don't know how to describe it, what they did for me, and like I said, it's been a couple of years, and I'm starting to learn now to discern when I feel emotions inside of me. I have to really ask myself, is this mine or is this someone else's?
Yes. Where's this coming from?
Yeah, and I look back on my life. I've been married and divorced more than once. Okay, I'm just gonna say that I've been married and divorced more than once. And my marriages, my exes and I, we used to have my first ex, not so much, but my second and my third one. Okay, so hold you how many times I've been married. There we go. But, we used to have tremendous battles, and I would feel anger inside of me that I didn't even know I had. And looking back on it, I realized I was feeding off their anger. It was their anger that I was feeling, and I was projecting it.
Yeah.
And it's nothing like being angry, not knowing why you're angry. Or not. When I say angry, feeling that, that rage or that upsetedness or whatever. But that's something that I'm not saying that was a Bigfoot encounter or what I kind of think it was, but I don't know. I can't say definitively what it was. But that, hands down, is the strangest thing I've ever had happen to me. Ever.
The better part of the other day of mine was eaten up by this book I found that was supposedly the Sasquatch's message for the readers. And I read this thing for like 3 hours the other day. And by the way, I prior to recently, I had no real interest in Bigfoot topics or anything. I approach conspiracies from a different angle. And this is a fascinating book, whether you believe it or not. Supposedly, the Bigfoots are highly intuitive, empathetic, intelligent beings, and they have a message for humanity that they had the writer put down into a book for us, and the book is called A Message for Humanity. I think you might find some things to relate to in the book.
Absolutely.
It's hard for me to say I believe.
I've heard that. I've heard of that book. Yeah.
But there's some compelling content that seems to sync up with what you're saying about them gravitating towards empaths. That was one of the more pronounced takeaways from the book. They're very kind, but will protect themselves. And more often than not, they protect themselves by simply not being observed. They try to stay hidden.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just thought I'd drop that book. You could find a PDF online, or I can send it to you.
Yeah, that sounds good. I'd definitely be interested. What I thought you were going to say is there was a book that was released years ago called Conversation, A Conversation with Bigfoot, where a bird watcher happened to come across a Bigfoot that had been mortally wounded or injured by a rock slide. He was trapped under boulders. I don't remember the whole gist of the story, but the Bigfoot spoke English and spoke to this guy, and this guy wrote down a whole bunch of stuff. I don't remember what it was about, but it sounds like similar, kind of a message to humanity, that kind of thing.
Okay, yeah. According to Message to Humanity, they're telepathic, and that's how they speak to you.
Right.
So when you brought up your story about seeing something in the woods and hearing this chorus of no, no, no in your own voice, it reminded me that's like something right out of this book. That's
I definitely
you would see.
What at the time when it happened, I actually did a search engine search for Bigfoot and chanting. Okay, and I found a guy that had a video on YouTube. I haven't been able to find it since, where he talks about having an encounter or an incident near Mount Shasta during the what is it, the big UFO conference they do out there, conference in the desert or whatever it is.
Yep.
And he had an encounter with something out there, a Bigfoot-like creature in the woods below Mount Shasta, and he heard the same thing, the chanting part. Well, I sent him an email and sent him a message on, put a comment on that YouTube, but I've never heard anything back. Yeah. But it's not something I've heard a lot. I've not, I would love, that's why I always share it, because I would love to hear more from somebody. And because it was, like I said, it was the strangest, wasn't the scariest thing I've ever felt until afterwards. But just to tell you how badly my body was shaking and my teeth were chattering, it was like I had sand in my mouth. My teeth had chipped, and I had grit in my mouth from the chattering being so intense, And it was, I'm telling you, it was a very, very bizarre. I can't describe how it felt, but like I said, my body was a buzz, definitely.
Something else interesting. There's it's actually a series. When I first discovered it, I thought it was just like, kind of a movie or something. But there's a series, and I found it. I think it's on other platforms, but I found it on Amazon, and it's called Hellier. And
I know about that, Hellier, Kentucky.
Yeah, that is one.
Yeah.
Interesting story. But you mentioned like the chanting and the tones, and I don't know if you've seen the whole thing yet, but basically this group of basically paranormal investigators, they get this cryptic email about goblins in the mountains of Kentucky. And it leads them down this extremely strange rabbit hole. I mean, we're talking goblins, we're talking UFOs, we're talking aliens, we're talking Mothman. And then we get into
Dogman.
And then they get into fairies, and there's supposedly another season coming out, but basically the second season ends with they are trying to contact what they refer to as Pan. And I'm trying to remember what pan is, but it's basically like the overall context, like the spirit of the earth. And they use tones and chanting to make this contact. They discover that they need to use tones and chanting to basically make this context. So when you brought that up, that immediately popped into my head. I was like, holy shit, you know. Maybe
they also say that pan is Baphomet. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I've heard that too. I've heard that too.
You know, the character Pan, they say is a softened up version of Baphomet. But you know. So I mean, I'm telling you, I have a date of a
Yeah. I know. I look at things from a Judeo-Christian point of view. So yeah, I'm very familiar with the whole Pan thing.
Why don't we do this, guys?
I'm like, hey, I'm over here going, no, I'm not going to say nothing.
Why don't we do this, guys?
Jason, that's why I mute my mic, because I'm like, no.
I'll tell you what, we're at like an hour 10. Usually we try to keep things around 45 minutes, but this was seriously so interesting that I mean, I could keep talking forever, but
can we play that?
Yeah, I was going to say, you know, even as you know, obviously compelling and as emotional as your personal encounter was, you did a beer commercial.
Yeah,
where you know, I mean, it kind of shows the lighter side of, you know, what you've gone through and what you do, right? And I think it really kind of tells us a little bit about you, that it's like, yeah, this experience in my childhood really kind of fucked me up for life, but I can still have fun with it. Why don't, Tyler, do you have that commercial ready?
We have it queued up.
Okay. Can we go ahead and play it?
Forgive the YouTube commercial.
As a scientist, I'm using my mind to take on challenges with the body.
We'll get some advertising royalty, maybe.
Can you full screen it there, Tyler?
Oh.
Perhaps. Why people being watched? Absolutely. Is Bigfoot real? Bigfoot is absolutely 100% real. My name is Jason Weaver, and I'm a Bigfoot researcher, experiencer. You know, there's believers and there's knowers, and I'm a knower. Georgia's very active. It's one of the hotbeds in the country. You'll see trees that'll be bent over like this, and the top part of the tree will be driven into another tree. That's an example right there. I mean, that's kind of the stuff that they do. Some have seen them as big as 12 foot, allegedly, but the average is usually anywhere from 7 to 9 foot tall. Sasquatch need plenty of cover, lots of wooded areas, lots of forest areas. They need plenty of fresh water. This is not a subject you can just bring up to anyone. A lot of people will look at you like your cheese is slipping off your cracker if you talk about such things. This is the buttocks imprint. I believe the print was left. That's a butt right there for sure.
That's a butt.
One of my techniques that I use to lure Bigfoot out of hiding is gifting them things. The best tool you can take in that situation is always keep an open mind.
Well, what about this? This work?
New Realm, hazy like a fox IPA. I don't think anybody's ever gifted a craft beer, so fruit's a big integral part of their diet. So a fruity flavor and is smooth, I think it'd be a great option.
So what if we built a bar big enough for Bigfoot?
I don't think that's ever been tried. Well, that's perfect. You guys are crazy. We sat here. The shoulders would probably be right about there. I think it's the perfect size for a Bigfoot. What I'm going to do is project the sound of this can of beer opening, and the sound will carry for miles into the woods in hopes of luring them back here to the bar. Get the scent in the air. Hopefully any motion that comes into our area, we'll catch it on camera.
I like it.
That's awesome. I love it.
Now I want to tell you something real quick about what happened that day. Now, right there at the very beginning, when I say, do I think we're being watched? Absolutely. I want to tell you what happened. About 10 minutes before they shot that, they were doing some kind of filler stuff. So you got to picture this. I've got 2 cameras. I've got a director and assistant director on each cameraman. And then I got a lady with a boom mic and some lighting guys and some various sound techs with headphones and laptops and whatnot. And then behind them, about 10 or 15 feet, there's probably 20 to 30 various grips, assistants, makeup artists, that kind of stuff. Well, as I'm talking, what would happen is the director would ask me a question, and you can see how it's set up. I'm not looking right at the camera. I'm looking at the director. You know, they do that like you're facing a far, distance or whatever. And as I'm talking to the director or answering the director's questions, his eyes get big, okay? So I'm watching him, and when his eyes got big, he's looking behind me. I immediately turn around to see a cantaloupe-sized rock get thrown. I didn't see it come down, but I saw it hit the ground and bounce and roll, okay? Well, they all saw it too. So immediately we're all like, now again, the film crew and production guys, they're from New York City, New Jersey, they're very urban. I'm just gonna say they're urban. They got their team hats and stuff, but you can tell none of them, this is the first time a lot of them had ever been in the woods completely, okay? Yeah. You can tell that totally. Well, when this happens, I look at them and I told them when they approached me about doing the commercial, I said I would do it, but don't make me look silly and don't make the subject look silly. We don't need that, Yeah. So they said they wouldn't, and they didn't. I appreciate what they did. But when that happened, I looked at these guys and I said, look, if you guys have done this and you're trying to get a natural reaction from me, great, I understand, but you got to tell me now. Did you guys do that? And they're all like, oh, man, no. And I'm like, seriously? And again, pardon my refrain, but I said, if you're fucking with me, I'm going to be upset. And they're like, oh, no. So they filmed me for about 30 minutes later. And it's about 5:30, 6 o'clock. It's in September. So the light's coming down. The sun's going down. Well, buddy, I never seen a film crew pack up so fast in my life, man. They were like, I know, but it was very strange what happened there, and I'm pretty sure that they had nothing to do with it. So, and it's just pretty interesting that when you see me saying, do I think we were being watched? Absolutely. I truly knew that we were being watched. I firmly believe that.
That's cool.
It was fun, though. Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Well, I thought Jason, they did justice to the topic and to yourself, and they didn't make you seem silly at all. That was the first thing I noticed about it. That was all those newspaper clippings and sticky notes. Were those actually yours? No. The interior shots were filmed at my friend's museum. He has a museum. His name's Dave Becerra. Okay. He's a Bigfoot researcher, and he has a museum in Blue Ridge, Georgia, LJ, Georgia, called Expedition Bigfoot, the Sasquatch Museum. Oh, neat. And so they filmed the interior shots. What had happened was they had actually approached him about doing the commercial, and Dave's like, man, I don't want to do that. I don't have time. And he says, but I got a guy that'd probably be perfect for you. So they gave them my contact information, and that's how I ended up. It was fun. I got paid to walk around the woods for 8 or 9 hours talking about Bigfoot. It was great. Great. Catered meal. It was awesome.
How was the beer?
The beer's good. It's not my. I don't like an IPA, but they've got another one now. They've got one that's called Jack Squatch. I think it's a double IPA. It's got a Bigfoot on the label and everything. It's really cool. But yeah, the beer's good. It's a brewery here in Atlanta called New Realm Brewing. They have a location in Atlanta and they have a location in Virginia Beach.
Cool.
So did Bigfoot ever come around and drink the beer?
Well, they did a live feed or whatever you want to call it, a live cam feed
like
one night.
A game camera.
Yep. Deal. And they had some eye shine. So they got a couple of. Some people were sitting there watching all night. I don't have time to watch a live feed like that. I don't want to see how many mosquitoes are driving by or flying by the lands. I don't care. But yeah, they had a live feed and they caught some eye shine. Can't say that it's definitively a Bigfoot, but it was a little weird. So it was fun.
Beer in the glass in the morning.
Yeah. Their beers. We did a live feed for them where I had a couple of researcher buddies, their brewmaster, and then their brand manager. We all did a live stream a couple of months after the commercial dropped, and we were drinking during the live stream. It was fun. It's first and only podcast interview I've ever been on where I don't drink a lot, so I got kind of boozy during it, but it was fun. Another thing, real quick, I know you guys got to go, but what I was going to tell you is that when I finally embraced the subject of Bigfoot and realized, when I embraced it and said my experience happened, and it is what it is, and I'm going to own it. When I finally embraced the subject, my entire life just kind of fell into place. You would not believe the synchronicities I've had since I embraced Bigfoot. Like I said, I went camping with Bob freaking Gimlin. Yeah. Okay, I mean, no kidding. The first Bigfoot footage I ever seen as a kid was on Leonard Nimoy's In Search Of, and it was the Patterson-Gimlin film. Yeah. And wow. I haven't talked to him in about a year or so, but I could call. I have a cell phone number. I can call him up. He's a busy guy, but he's the Johnny Cash of Bigfoot, man. He's a real. You ever get a chance to meet him? He's the real deal. He's a real deal. Good guy.
Don't and correct me if I'm wrong. Don't you do some stuff with The Walking Dead too?
Yeah, I was doing a little bit of The Walking Dead is filmed down. It's not far actually from that camping area that I was telling you about. But I got locked in with The Walking Dead a few years ago, and they actually had they had a tour company there. If you remember the season with the governor.
Yep.
Do you watch The Walking Dead?
Yeah.
I haven't finished it, but I've seen a lot of it.
Right. Well, there's a scene where Rick sits down with the governor in a barn, and he brings whiskey. I got whiskey. I don't know if you know the scene I'm talking about. Mm-hmm. Well, that was filmed on Esco Feed Mill in Harrelson, Georgia, and I was part of the tour group there, where people used to come by and pay to tour the place, and I was Merle. I got to dress up like Walker Merle, Merle Dixon. But we would do fundraisers and that kind of stuff. Got to meet a few of the cast members here and there, but that's really cool. If you ever get a chance to come to Walking Dead country, Sonoy, Georgia, I mean, you can walk down the street, you'll see Daryl Dick or see Norman Reedus drive by in his Camaro, and I mean, it's neat. Atlanta has become the new Hollywood, and I mean, it's amazing who you see. We went to a kind of a new agey thing where they had like tarot card readers and people that talk to angels. My girlfriend wanted to go to this thing at the Cobb Galleria. We saw Ben Affleck in a photo shoot at the Cobb Galleria going to this. It's like, holy cow, Ben Affleck. I mean, it's wild to see him in the area. It's kind of cool.
See him in the wild, huh?
Yeah. I mean, to see him. We have filming nearby here all the time. There's certain subdivisions like the new reboot of Dynasty. The show Dynasty, they did a reboot. Yeah. It's filmed one of the subdivisions they film in is just down the road from here. You see, they put up the yellow production signs where extras go here and crew go there, that kind of thing. But I've seen the movie Rampage with The Rock, where the gorilla gets some kind of drug from space and grows up. That was filmed in the backyard of our old house. We just bought this house a little over a year ago, but that was filmed in the backyard of our old house. That's kind of cool. So it's Hollywood here, man. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, Atlanta's really grown up. It's kind of like the Hollywood of the East Coast.
Yeah, we call it Atlanta Wood. What do we call it?
Atlanta Wood.
Better food. Better. Hey, you cannot mess with Georgia cooking. Cornbread.
Dude, food's great here.
Cooking. Oh, the best.
What I like is that. Go ahead.
The best gravy, the best sausage gravy, the best, just the comfort food there. Best cornbread, best.
Oh man, I can't wait to go back.
Dude, and then the barbecue they do there is just nuts.
Yeah. Oh, I'm a barbecue nut. I'm not one of these guys that stops at the whole joints and gets barbecue. But you can. What I love about it is the music. I'm a musician. I love music. And you can catch anybody. Everybody comes to Atlanta, whether it's a small venue, singer-songwriter, or big major act, at Lakewood Amphitheater or whatever. You can catch anybody, and I really like that. That's cool.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of musicians here. I've gotten to hang out and jam with a couple of the members of the original Atlanta Rhythm section. That's kind of cool, to hang out with real musicians like that. I dig it. I dig it.
Totally.
when I was in the Army, I was seeing concerts all the time. So before they got big, you know, like Matchbox 20, Better Than Ezra, and all that stuff. Bush, when they came through, played at a small bar. You know, and it's like there's like 100 people there. You know, and then that's when 16 Stone came out, and then later they blew up on the West Coast. Yeah, a lot of Christian music too.
Yeah.
Yep, it sure is.
I'll tell you what, guys, we should probably wrap this up. But Jason, I seriously want to thank you for joining us.
Yeah.
Sure, guys. Thanks for having me. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I mean, it was a lot of fun. And I mean, like I said, me and Jason had kind of met before. Through like a Facebook group, and we found out that we kind of shared some interests. Coming into this, Jason, I knew that basically I had no idea that was your experience.
We've never talked about
I had no idea.
More than I bargained for.
The most that we've done, seriously, is like exchange ideas for like Bigfoot t-shirts.
Yep.
And that sort of thing.
Yep.
So to hear that for the first time here was actually amazing. So I really appreciate you coming.
Thank you for sharing your story with us.
Well, thanks for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Dude, I appreciate it. I appreciate your openness and your transparency. It's awesome.
Yeah, definitely.
Well,
now,
thank you.
Okay, now, do you want to be available if somebody in the audience seeing this wants to shoot you an email about Bigfoot?
Sure.
How do people connect with you?
How can people connect?
Probably would be my email. Let me give it to you. It's some circles. I'm a bit of a mentor and life coach and that kind. I have a lot of experience, so I like to pass it on. You know, I always say the difference between a smart person and a wise person is a smart person learns from their mistakes, and a wise person learns from the mistakes of others. So I try to help people be wise. You know what I mean? But so my email is doc, like doctor, but I'm not a doctor. Okay, it's doc, D-O-C, weave, W-E-A-V-E, at outlook.com. And just put the if somebody wants to reach out to me, just in the subject put, you know, heard you on Thread Weird Podcast or whatever the title of your podcast is, and so I know who I'm talking to.
Yeah,
and I'll be happy to talk to anybody. If they have questions or whatnot, you know, I'm an open book.
Awesome. Well, that's much appreciated.
And anybody
as well.
seeing that? That is the email to reach Jason Weaver, our very special guest tonight. Once again, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Hey, will this be available for like rebroadcast or?
Yeah, we will. Yep, we'll have it posted up for a replay, and then all the links for that. I have all the links for the lives and the replays all over the Threadweird social pages. So if you're looking for something, just look at Threadweird on Facebook, Instagram, about 8 others. We're everywhere right now.
Lucky fellow.
Twitch will stay.
We're trying, man. We're trying.
Facebook might ban us.
Yeah, you never know.
Yeah.
So
I posted a picture on my own feed the other day, and it said that it was submitted to an administrator for approval. I'm like, this is my own damn page. What's this? When did I get an administrator?
I liked the Mother's Day post, and they thought it was questionable.
Yeah.
Yeah, whatever.
That's crazy. So, but yeah, hey, thank you again, man. I truly appreciate it, and I mean, I'd like to have you back sometime because I think
man, no problem. I've got a lot more to tell you. I got tons to tell you.
Yeah, we can talk about a lot of different stuff. So I think
I do. I have a bunch to tell you. I mean, there's always something happening, and like I said, weirdness follows me. We just moved this house a year ago, and I haven't heard anything yet. In spring, it's not too active, but about midsummer, all the way up until the leaves fall off the tree, I have weirdness abound in my backyard. I'm hearing weird things, flute music, and all sorts of weird stuff back there. But so I mean, it's kind of weird. I had somebody do a remote view. Somebody wanted a remote view of my backyard, and so I gave them my address so they could do that. Yeah. And they told me that there's a portal back there someplace, whatever that means. But I have some weirdness happening. I'm finding weird rocks on my steps, and it's wild.
Oh wow!
I'm inviting myself to your house right now.
Yeah,
if you have a portal.
Yeah, man, come on down.
I want to see the portal.
You're in Minnesota, right, Mike?
I am. Yeah.
That's like an hour
well, you still got snow on the ground up there, don't you?
No, it's been nice. It actually.
Okay.
We're approaching 80 degrees today, so.
I have a good buddy of mine that's from Minnesota. I mean, Abe Del Rio. He's got. Yeah, right. Exactly. He lives in Minnesota. My buddy Abe. He's got the Minnesota Bigfoot research team. I don't know if you ever heard of Abe Del Rio, but
I've heard the name. Yeah.
Yeah, he's a very active researcher in Minnesota. He and I are good buds.
Cool. Cool. I should connect up with him. That'd be awesome.
Yeah, Minnesota's got a lot of activity up there. You should get more involved in the deal.
Well, I'm in southern Minnesota.
So
we're
still get snow, right?
It's more soybeans and cornfields.
Oh,
but
right.
I don't have to go far to get
They like soybeans and cornfields too. They're equal opportunity eaters. They like those areas too.
I'm buying a Bigfoot costume and showing up at Mike's house.
All right, get shot, man. You might not do that.
Yeah, exactly. Well, hey, Jason, thanks again so much. And
sure.
Yeah, I will. What I'll do is, I'll send you replay links and all that stuff once we get it up. And like I said, we'd love to have you back at some point. That was awesome.
Yep. Just let me know as long as I have, I'm usually pretty free. My girlfriend works nights and she was supposed to work tonight and they put her on call. And then they said, oh, you can hang out. And then about 30 minutes after they said she can hang out and chill, they called her in. So she left. Yeah. Right as I was jumping on board with you all, so that's why I was like, hold on a minute, the dogs are barking. But anyways, I appreciate y'all having me on. I enjoyed it.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you.
All right. Take care, man.
Yep. You too. Bye.
And thank you everybody for joining us tonight.
Yeah, definitely.
That's good.
Like I said,
he was superb. He's got all kinds of stories, and you could tell we just scratched the surface.
Yeah. We're still there.
Yeah. And like I said, I had never. I knew that he had some sort of experience, but I had no idea what it actually entailed. So. Yeah,
I had no idea what to expect tonight, but I was blown away with the story.
Yeah, everybody, thanks for watching.
We'll end it there. And
we did mention that all the links and stuff. We're in the process of getting the podcasts that we've done so far. We're in the process of getting those uploaded to various platforms, and hopefully we're going to have that all done soon. But if you're ever looking for a replay, just go to Thread Weird on Facebook. Like I said, Instagram, one of the socials. Chances are, if it's a social media platform, we are on there under the name of Thread Weird in some form. So thanks for watching, everybody, and have a good night.
Have a good night.
Basta.